So we are going to start by breaking down this foundation of our engine here. So this down here is going to be our crankcase. And like I said, this will be the foundation of that engine. This is what is going to be holding up our cylinders for us. So inside of that crankcase, we have our flywheel assembly. Now in our Milwaukee 8, we are now at a gear-on-gear driven flywheel assembly. And I do have a display out on that plant floor. We'll see the difference between our old twin cam engines and our new Milwaukee 8 engines. Those old twin cams, we had chain-driven components. So by switching over to this gear-on-gear driven assembly, we took out about 75% of that vibration in that engine. It also just takes a lot less power and energy to get all of these components moving, so it gives us a much smoother ride. Now, this crankcase, this flywheel assembly, is going to be made up of two halves here. We are going to press these two halves together with one common crank pin on the inside, and that is where these connecting rods will be firing. So these connecting rods that are moving around inside of that flywheel will be pressed to the inside here. Now, these connecting rods are what make your Harley sound like a Harley. What we like to call our iconic potato exhaust tone. Potato, 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 potato. That comes from these connecting rods right here. So these are what we call a unique forked design. We have a double connecting rod. We have a single connecting rod. They will be sitting inside of each other like so and firing on that one common crank pin. Now, most other motorcycle models, two separate connecting rods, separate crank pins, firing at separate times. So this is unique to Harley-Davidson, and that is what gives us that iconic exhaust tone. Now, on top of that that crankcase, is going to be our cylinders. So these are our combustion chambers of our engine, where our air and fuel are going to be mixing. So these are going to be aluminum with a steel sleeve insert on the inside there. We are going to put this steel sleeve insert through a machining process that we call cross-hatching. It's just going to etch a bunch of little minuscule lines onto the inside of this cylinder chamber here, so that when our pistons are moving up and down, they don't get caught on anything. So those cylinders will be sitting right over top of our crankcase here on each side. And that is where our pistons will be moving up and down. So our pistons will be sat right over top of these connecting rods here, so that as these connecting rods are firing around that flywheel assembly, our pistons will be pushed up and they will be pushed down, creating that combustion inside of that cylinder. Now, does anybody know the 4 strokes of an engine cycle? Compression and exhaust. Yep, perfect. It was a team effort. I love it. So we have intake, compression, combustion, and exhaust. So you'll see this flywheel assembly, our connecting rods are going to have to make 2 full revolutions for that one engine cycle. So we'll start up top with intake, fire down, for compression, up for combustion, and back down for exhaust. And that will create that engine cycle for us. Now, on top of those cylinders, we have our cylinder heads. Does anybody know why a Milwaukee 8 is called a Milwaukee 8?
Eight valves?
Correct. You know my most common answer? Because it was made in Milwaukee. You know, they're not wrong, right? But we have 8 valves inside of this powertrain. 4 valves per cylinder head there. So we are going to have 2 exhaust valves that are going to sit inside like so, and 2 intake valves as well. These like to be tricky for me. Oh, I've got it today. There we go. So this is the bottom of that cylinder head. If we were to flip it right side up, and those valves are now installed, we can see those valve stems are now poking up into the top of that cylinder head. That is because on top of those valve stems will be where our rocker arms are sitting. So these are going to be opening and closing those valves for us. So those will sit right over top of those valve stems there. They will be rocking back and forth, hitting those valve stems, opening and closing them for us. So that is happening underneath that rocker box cover there. Now, this will give us some of our aesthetic variations of our engines. One of the first bikes we'll see out on that plant floor is going to be one of our CVO models, or those custom vehicle operations models. Kind of the higher end of the spectrum there. You need a few extra money trees for those ones. Those ones will have our red rocker box covers. So again, that's where some of those different aesthetics are coming in. But we are going to have our rocker box cover, and you'll notice this is in kind of an H shape. There is actually a reason for that. In our Milwaukee 8, we actually have a dual spark plug setup. So we are going to have 2 spark plugs per cylinder head. One will be in the very front of that cylinder head, and one will be in the very back. What this is going to do is it's just going to fire our combustion a little bit more evenly across those pistons, driving them down a bit further for us, giving us a lot more power. So if I turn this around here, you'll see we're going to have 1 spark plug in the very front here, and then the other ones will be installed back here. All right. Now, we're going to break underneath this case right here, this cover. This is what we call our cam cover. Any idea what would be underneath our cam cover?
Camshaft.
Our camshaft, there you go. You passed the test. So underneath that cam cover, we will have our camshaft. Now, in our Milwaukee 8, we are down to 1 singular cam with 4 of these offset lobes. Our old twin cam engines, 2 cams, 2 offset lobes each. All right. Grab my parts. So over here, underneath that cam cover, is where that cam will be sitting. It will sit inside like so, and as it is spinning around, those offset lobes are going to be hitting our lifters. Now these are going to have little roller ball bearings on the end. So as that cam is spinning around and those lifters are hitting those offset lobes, they will be lifted up and down. So we will put them inside of our tappet covers here. So as that cam spins around, you can see those offset lobes will be moving up and down. Now that is where our push rods are going to be sitting. These are going to be hollow so that oil can be moving up and down throughout them. So as those offset lobes spinning around, lifting our lifters, they'll be pushing our push rods up and down. Our push rods are going to be hitting our rocker arms, rocking our rocker arms back and forth, opening and closing those valves. So it's like a giant functioning puzzle, right? All of those parts working together. So our push rods will be right there underneath our push rod covers. And then these down here are those tappet covers where those offset lobes, or excuse me, those lifters will be sitting. All right, so we have this beautiful engine creating all of this wonderful power for us. But we need to take that over to our transmission side. And we are going to do that through our inner primaries. So if we were to turn this around here, this is where those inner primaries will be sitting. Now, this is our inner primary case. It will be sitting over top, like so, housing our inner primaries. This is the only part that we are machining here at Pilgrim Road, but not attaching to your powertrain. The only reason for this, it will not fit on our shipping pallets. So we are going to machine this and then send it directly to York, Pennsylvania for that final vehicle assembly. And that is where they will also install your inner primaries. But our inner primaries are going to consist of three main parts. We have our clutch pack that is doing the slightly important job of helping us come to a stop and brake. You know, just the slightly important things. And that will be sitting right over top of our input shaft here. Now we also have our compensator. So as our inner primary chain is moving along these two components, our compensator is going to compensate for any give in that inner primary chain. So this compensator is going to use what we call a ramp design to act like it is spring-loaded. It is not actually spring-loaded. It's just that design that is going to help us pick up any slack in that chain. Sorry?
Tapered?
Yes, yep. You'll see, I'll bring this around. You guys can spin it and take a closer look. I'll hold it because it is like 10 different parts, but you guys can give it a little turn to feel that.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see it's that little ramp design there.
Don't break it, don't break it.
Went all the way around. I say it's like the fidget spinner of 2025.
Oh, that's cool.
That is cool.
It's a very expensive fidget spinner.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Like so. If I can get it in there. And so, like I said, our inner primary chain will be spinning around these two. And that compensator, if there's any give or slack in that chain, will pick up that slack for us. This chain likes to run away on me. All right, so These inner primaries are going to be taking all of that energy over to our transmission for us. Now, this is the fun part. This is where I start to lose people, because you can understand the basic, 4 strokes of an engine cycle. It's pretty basic. We get over to the gear pack and I start seeing minds wander. But we are going to run through this gear pack sitting here. This is going to be what is making up that transmission. So we are going to have, move some of this out of the way so you can see. We are going to have our bearing plate, and that is going to be sitting on the bottom here, aligning that transmission for us. So you can see our gear pack will be sitting right over top there. And this is going to be made up of 3 main components. We have our input shaft, or the longer of the 2, our counter shaft, and then behind those 2, our shifter barrel. So, our input shaft is going to go through a few different machining tactics. We are going to first cold roll the splines into the end of that input shaft. That is where that clutch pack is going to be sitting over top. We will then drill out the main middle hole throughout this input shaft, and that is where our clutch rod will be sitting. We will then cut our gear teeth into that input shaft. You'll notice only first gear is straight up and down cut. This is because we spend a lot less time in first gear, and it's actually more expensive for us to do this helical cut. So we are going to just straight cut first gear using a tool like so, and then we will use a hob to create that helical cut for us. Now our counter shaft will be sitting right next to that input shaft. This is one of the first pieces that we are going to be seeing out on that floor. It is going to come to us with only 6th gear on it. We will machine 6th gear, and then 5th gear is going to be called a jump-on gear, or a press-on gear, meaning we are just installing that down in assembly. But those 2 will be sitting in the front of our gear pack, that input shaft spinning around, taking our input energy and turning that counter shaft. Now, our shifter barrel. This is going to be what is locking us in and out of different gears. So you'll see these squiggly lines here. These are where our shifter forks will be sitting. So as this shifter barrel is turning, it will be moving those shifter forks up and down, or when it's actually in the case, back and forth, and that will be locking us in and out of different gears. Now, this little star shape you'll see on the bottom there.
Yep.
That is going to be that detent you are feeling as you are riding. That little clunk into gear, if you will. Any guesses what this much smaller notch is for? Neutral. So neutral is going to be this much smaller notch in between first and second, and that's why, when I say that, I get a lot of people going, that's why I always skip over it. That's why I can never find it. It's that much smaller notch. Listen, I've done it too. I'll be going through this gear pack and I'll skip right over neutral. All right. I am going to show you guys how that gear pack is locking us in and out of different gears. I have to suit up. It's very official. All right. So let me make sure we are down in first here. Some days it likes me, some days it doesn't. There we go. Okay, so now we are down in first. So we are going to start on this countershaft side. We are now locked down into first with that bottom shifter fork. So when we shift up to neutral, this bottom shifter fork is going to come up and out of first gear and in between first and second. So freeing us up from any gear, like so. We will then shift up into second gear, like so. To get to third gear, this bottom shifter fork is going to go back down into that neutral position, so in between first and second, freeing us up. And this top shifter fork is going to lock down into third, like so. We'll shift up into fourth. We will come over to our input shaft side and shift down into fifth, and then up into our sixth main drive gear. You'll notice sixth gear isn't actually on there right now. That is just because we are pressing it directly into that transmission case. All right, I think that about covers the basics, right? All right, so I'm actually going to have you guys head to these back tables, and I'm going to put you to work. We are going to build a gear pack. So if you want to pair up so that everybody can manage to get a table there.